Morality. It's something people, well, most people, in this world have. It keeps us from doing things we may end up truly regretting. It's what keeps us from crossing that line that keeps us in the difference between human and monster. You could say that morality is what helps us remember that we're truly human beings. And not just monsters feeding on our own darkness. Although, in a lot of games throughout the years, well, at least the ones I've played, there have not really been many that tackle that kind of concept and make you truly think. The only one I've ever really played in recent time has been Undertale and, to an extent, its successor Deltarune. So I was rather curious if there were games that genuinely tackled it. And in my search for one, I came across a game known simply as Off. It was something I actually barely could find anything about without the threat of spoilers. All I knew was that it tackled morality in a very interesting way. So I hunted down a download file online and decided to play it for myself. And after beating it, how do I feel about it? Well, how about we get into that, shall we? Hey everyone, it's me, Crimson Rosso, and welcome to another episode of One and Dones, where we revisit one-off RPGs to see if they deserve to be left behind. With that said, let's begin. Okay, let's begin, shall we? First thing I want to talk about when it comes to Off is easily the monster designs of this game. I love the designs of the enemies in Off. Otherwise known as the Spectres, have a large amount of various designs that all give off either this unnerving demonic feel to them, or a cutesy, almost innocent look to them too. Long, elongated necks, gigantic misshapen heads on normal-looking bodies, giant twisted rat things, tiny little ghosts that are pretty cute, I'm not gonna lie. The people who worked on Off really seem to fully understand the concept of art design, as not only are enemies memorable, but level design is as well. See, Off was made in RPG Maker 2003, so it has the kind of design you would expect from something like that. Large blocky textures, simple color schemes, so I'm judging it by what it can deliver for an RPG Maker game made in 2008. And to its credit, it does what it can very well. The creators took these blocky, simple textures and turned them into a bunch of brightly colored sections that felt so, well, off. Every zone you visit has this distinctly unnerving feel to it. Like there's this giant puzzle in front of you, and you are missing some key pieces to it all to make it really fit. It makes the levels feel genuinely interesting to walk around in. Of course, they are made even more unnerving by how everyone who lives there is just so weirdly passive, and sometimes even clueless about what's going on around them. Almost like they're just a bunch of kids who don't know any better. It really adds to this whole world's just genuine creepiness. Other than that, I ain't got much else to say in terms of graphical design. So, how about we move on to talking about Off's gameplay? So, Off is built around two different gameplay concepts, combat and puzzle solving, both of which I think were done pretty well. The combat is turn-based, built off the ATB gauge, the likes of Final Fantasy IX and other various RPGs. You wait until your gauge fills up, and then you unleash normal physical attacks, special moves known only as competence points, which have a variety of uses like dealing heavy amounts of damage, increasing stats, or healing party members. It's a simple combat system that gets the job done and is very easy to understand for pretty much everyone. And on the other side of gameplay, you have the puzzle elements of Off, which I thought were pretty neat. I don't usually play many puzzle titles, as I'm someone who prefers action over puzzle solving. I'm also not very smart, so puzzle games almost always beat me. So I admit I was prepared for Off to do the same, but thankfully I didn't, as I actually ended up enjoying myself more than expected. No puzzle ever felt overly long, and I never got stuck on one singular puzzle to the point I got frustrated. Plus the game is rather short, so it never got tedious to do the puzzles. Well, kind of. I think both the puzzles and the combat were rather fun, but they had some big issues that we will get to later. Other than that, nothing else left to say about gameplay. So let's move on to the story and its characters next. So what is Off even about anyways? Well, in Off, you play as yourself, controlling and guiding someone known only as the Batter, who's on a journey to cleanse and purify the world by defeating the specters that inhabit it. And helping you on this journey is the Judge, a mighty being that looks like a cat mixed with the teeth of a piranha. The Judge is the one who points our dear Batter in the direction of the people we must destroy in order to purify the world they live in. Seems like a pretty cut and dry story when you see it from an outsider perspective, but when you start playing the game, you start picking up that something feels rather strange in this world. Almost like something is off. Am I right?
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
My hilarious comedy aside, The more you dive into Off, the more questions you seem to start asking yourself. Things like, where exactly did this world come from? Why does the batter seem so cold about what he's doing? Whenever we kill a boss, why do the worlds feel like we've just made them worse as a result of it? All these questions really start making you think twice about what exactly is even going on. This is also helped by the game's soundtrack, which makes every section of the game have a more ominous feel to it. It gives you this uneasy and nervous feeling that something is very, very wrong. And it all culminates in the endgame, where after defeating the bosses of each zone and solving the final dungeon, you finally confront the queen of this world, who shockingly seems to act like she knows who the batter is. And they begin a conversation between them that revolves around the child we've been seeing every time we cut down a boss, and how she was supposed to watch over him but apparently failed according to the batter, and as such it's up to the batter to fix it. And after you defeat her, it leads to probably the single most unnerving moment in the entire game, where you finally find the child that's been just seen throughout all these cutscenes, and a fight begins. You cannot run, you cannot refuse to fight. The only thing you can do is fight and beat the kid to death. He doesn't fight back, you just do that. And it's then and there when it finally sinks in. Just what we have done. Was our goal really so important that it justified cutting down a child in the process? All of this culminates in a final interaction with the judge, calling out our bullshit on how our actions have done nothing but bring hurt and despair to everyone in the zones. And thus, we are presented with one final option. We can finish our mission and continue helping the batter, or we can choose to side with the judge to destroy him. But here's the kicker. Neither ending is a happy one. Siding with the batter has you killing the judge and basically erasing the entire world, while siding with the judge lets you kill the batter, but there's nothing left afterwards. The world has been erased of all life due to our actions. I know that makes both endings sound bleak, but in all honesty, I kind of like this concept. It shows us that due to us never stopping to think about the consequences of our actions, we allowed all of this to just happen. We don't get a happy ending. We could have stopped it. It hits you hard that if we could just learn to draw a line about what the batter was doing in all of this, we probably could have prevented everything from happening. But the world didn't get that, and as a result, it's now gone no matter what. And that's a pretty heavy concept. And that's pretty much it for pros. So how about we move on to talking about the issues Off has. Alrighty, I think it's about time we got into the issues that Off has. And to do that, we're going to start off with what the issues' combats were. The fuck did I just say? Anyways, we're going to talk about this game's combat issues. Now, Off's ATB style of combat is perfectly fine at a first glance. It's basically just Final Fantasy IV with other job classes. It's perfectly serviceable for gameplay. Its main issue comes with its challenge. Or maybe I should say a lack thereof one. Off is without a doubt one of the easiest games I've played in a good long while. Every boss and Spectre can just be beaten by spamming the strongest attacks you have with little consequence whatsoever. Pretty much every fight boils down to enter combat, beat them to death with your strongest attack, rinse and repeat. Every fight is solved this way. There are only 2 exceptions to this entire rule in the entire game, and they both take place in Zone 3 of all places. The first is when the shopkeeper asks the batter to get him a rare item in exchange for some important information, and said rare item is guarded by a Spectre. At first, you think it's just beat him the same way as everyone else, but instead, partway through, your attacks seem to just not work anymore, because he actually spawns a small head you have to strike down instead, and the other goes to the boss fight of Zone 3, where you realize partway through your attacks aren't affecting him at all, and have to actually flee from battle and have to constantly run away until you tire him out. And once he's exhausted, you beat the shit out of him until he dies. And if these seem like I'm kind of scraping from the bottom of the barrel, it's because I am. But I felt like they were at least mentioning since it is worth talking about. But other than those two, that's pretty much it for combat. So let's move on to the other part of gameplay, the puzzle solving. Now, this is hard to grade for me, as I don't exactly play a lot of puzzle games, so I'm just going to mention my 2 issues with the puzzles overall. For one, I wasn't exactly a fan of so many puzzles requiring a notepad. I like memorization puzzles, don't get me wrong, even if I'm bad at them. But after having to stop my gameplay to write down a number over like 14 times, you just start getting tired of it. But aside from that, I had no other major issues with the puzzles. Well, except for one. and it was such a pain that it easily became my least favorite puzzle in the entire game. The water boat puzzle. See, how it works is that you're placed on this little duck boat, and you need to navigate a series of paths in order to reach a switch. And boy, is it frustration incarnate. Not only is this puzzle annoying as one minor mistake can force you to have to completely restart, but the paths you need to pay attention to in order to proceed are barely visible, causing immense eye strain when I was trying to figure it out. It was such a massive pain in the ass to deal with that I just genuinely didn't enjoy any of my time with it. Which sucks because it is one of the more interesting puzzles in the game, solely for the fact that it isn't based on memorization. Such a shame, but other than that, no other problems with gameplay. Now, on to story. For story, well, I don't have all that many issues to go off on. The only real complaint I have with it is I kinda wish the morality stuff came up more in the game. It's not this huge issue, but it would have been interesting to have more people in the game either call you out for your bullshit other than the bosses, or maybe make choices that could lead to a different ending. But I also kinda see why they didn't. It would probably make the ending hit a little less hard. Other than that though, I've got no other issues, so let's just move on to my final thoughts, shall we? Off was certainly an interesting experience, to say the least. I'm glad that I finally got to play it, sure, and I definitely did end up enjoying myself more than I expected to, but I won't deny that a good portion of it hasn't aged super well in the gameplay department. But for a game made in an RPG Maker, it's certainly of a much higher quality than a good portion of them. And that is why my final rating for this game is a nice ol' 6 out of 10. Now, on to the real question. Should this game get a sequel? I personally say yes. There's a giant well of potential for games like this, especially since games like Undertale show how a fully fleshed out idea like morality tackling can work. Here's hoping the creators decide to make a sequel one day. And that's it for this video. Thank you all for joining me for another episode of One and Dones. I'm glad I could finally get another one of these off the ground, and expect more in the coming days. If you enjoyed what you saw here, make sure you like and sub down below for more RPG content. Also, if you have any one-off RPG ideas for the series, let me know in the comments below. I'll link your channel or something if you tell me a good one. That's all, folks. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time for more RPG shenanigans.